fix. There we go. Since you're going to join me, I will turn on the desktop audio. Does that sound okay? Oh, I see. Yeah, I already said that. Okay. Okay. So we are going to go through a lot today. We'll go through Saturday's plan, and then because we only do this Monday through Friday, so on Mondays we catch up on Saturday's reading, and then we do Monday's reading. And it's a pretty good chunk, but it's pretty straightforward. Not a whole lot of deep diving on these sections, but definitely still a lot that we can take away from it. So we'll start on Genesis 27. And I think I'm going to go to ESV today. Okay. Ow, excuse me. And there I go early. All right. Ow, excuse me. Sorry. So, Genesis 27. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food, that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." But Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, "Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing." His mother said to him, "Let your curse be on me, my son, only obey my voice and go bring them to me." So he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck, and she put the delicious food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. So he went into his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" Ow, excuse me, gosh. He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He answered him, "I am." And he said, "Bring it near to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you." So he brought it near to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him and said, "See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. Be lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, then Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father. Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I am your son, your firstborn Esau." Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, "Who is it then that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." As soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me, even me also, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." Then he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered and said to Esau, "Behold, I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants, and with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Then Isaac his father answered and said to him, "Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck." Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching, then I will kill my brother Jacob." But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob her younger son, and said to him, "Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while, until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day?" Then Rebekah said to Isaac, "I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me?" So, a lot of deception happens in this little piece of our story here. One thing to note is that blessings that are made on the deathbed, so like Isaac blessed his sons on his deathbed, that is legally binding, and it's basically like a will. So when he blessed Jacob, that was a legally binding blessing, and basically saying, like, you are going to be the new head of the household. Um, and it can't be taken back, and it can't be changed. It's just as good as a will in these days. Rebecca telling her son to go and deceive his father is definitely a good example of how people try to take matters into their own hands, and they don't trust that, you know, God told Rebecca, this is what I have in store, but she didn't trust God to take care of it. She took matters into her own hands and tried to force it to happen the way that she wanted to try to ensure that it would happen. She didn't trust God enough to let him do it. Also, with this blessing from Isaac to Jacob was like passing the torch. So when Abraham died, his blessing went on to Isaac, and now Isaac's blessing is going on to Jacob. And that is the blessing that God bestowed upon Abraham and all of his descendants. So this blessing is like the inheritance that just keeps on going, and God's covenant that he made with Abraham's line. So it is going to be passed on to Jacob, as God said when Jacob was born, that Jacob would be the one to receive that blessing in full. So again, Rebecca went about it in very deceitful ways, but it was God's plan all along for Jacob to have the blessing. This wasn't necessarily the right way to go about it, but again, people try to take matters into their own hands and not trust God with his plan. Also, one piece of notes here that I thought was worth sharing is that Rebecca's deception was definitely a form of manipulation. And again, touching on the fact that she didn't trust God. So one of my notes here that I again thought was worth sharing. Manipulation is rooted in pride and selfishness and involves viewing others as objects, not as individuals. And in these instances, the manipulation will bring a lot of sorrow versus joy. Later in the story, we'll see that it's definitely manipulating people and trying to take matters into your own hands rather than trusting God will not bring you joy. It won't bring you what you're looking for exactly. And anytime a person focuses on self rather than God, the possibility of manipulation exists. Fundamentally, such an attitude shows a lack of trust in God and suggests the erroneous belief that since God is not doing the right thing, we must take matters into our own hands and attempt to control environment, circumstances, and people by whatever means available. Manipulation is ultimately rooted in a lack of trust in God and a negative self-image that manifests itself in a driving need to control. So that definitely speaks towards Rebecca here. And then the blessings. So he gave the ultimate blessing to Jacob, which included a promise of plenty, domination, and kind of a contrast to the blessing and the curse. So anybody who curses him will be cursed. And then when he blessed Esau, it was a blessing so that he would share in the fertility of the land, but he's not gonna have the full benefit of the blessing like Jacob received. So he got kind of a half blessing compared to what Jacob received. Okay. So we're going to move on to 28. Any comments? Any thoughts before we move on? No? Yes?
It seems that it's a question of faith to allow God to take control or take the wheel, so to speak. And that's that leap of faith of actually putting yourself in a situation that you are vulnerable. And a lot of people don't like doing that. So they
Indeed. Yes, yeah, very, very good points for sure. People are very selfish people. That is our nature, unfortunately. But it is by the grace of God and trusting in God that we get to have or do anything. And we get to see a lot of that in the next chapters. So we are going to jump into Genesis 28. Okay. Okay, so Jacob was sent out to find a wife with his mother's family. So he is going to his uncle's household to find a wife now, and that's where we pick up. All right. Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and directed him. You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take as your wife from there one of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. You remember, inter-family marriage was very common practice back then. In fact, interracial or uh, inter what's the right term? Marrying outside of your faith, especially, but um, interracial marriage was a, how did it put it? It's basically like a threat to your faith. If you marry somebody that is outside of your race, that meant that they probably have a different faith, and you are risking um, that basically contaminating your relationship with God and influencing that. So it was very frowned upon to marry outside of your family and your race because the chances of them serving the same God were higher if they were within your family, especially within Abraham's family. So that was the hope when he was set out to marry someone within his mother's family, is that they would be of the same faith and it would be somebody of their family to continue the bloodline. God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may become a company of peoples. May he give the blessing of Abraham to you and to your offspring with you, that you may take possession of the land of your sojournings that God gave to Abraham. Thus Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padan Aram to Laban, the son of Bethuel the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's and Esau's mother. Now Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take a wife from there, and that as he blessed him, he directed him, You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. And that Jacob had obeyed his father and his mother and gone to Padan Aram. So when Esau saw that the Canaanite women did not please Isaac his father, Esau went to Ishmael and took as his wife, besides the wives he had, Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebaioth. So if you remember, Ishmael is the son that Abraham had from the servant woman Hagar. And then they were cast out, and God provided for them and took care of them, but they were gone. So he went to Ishmael and took one of his daughters as his wife, as another wife. And he had already, Esau, at the end of chapter 26, we saw he took multiple wives. So he's already married to Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. So he already has two Hittite women, as wives, which was very frowned upon in itself. The fact that there's multiple, and the fact that they were Hittite women. So now, in his jealousy of Jacob, he is going and he's taking another wife, and another wife that is also from a line that would have been frowned upon as well. So Esau is trying to one up his brother, but he's really not doing himself any favors. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran, and he came to a certain place and stayed there that night, because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. Oh, gosh, excuse me, sorry. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So early in the morning Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head, and set it up for a pillar, and poured oil on top of it. He called the name of the place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz at the first. So he changed the name to Bethel. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, If God will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. And this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you. So this is the first point where Jacob actually puts his faith in God. So he hadn't put his faith in God yet. He was more just following the commands of his mother, and his father, mostly his mother. And now this is the first point that he realizes that God is at work in his life, and he puts his faith in God. This is also one of the first comments, one of the first statements about tithing, where he about the specific allocation of tithing. So a tenth of what he gets, he's going to give back to God. Ouch. There's one other thing. No, I guess that was it. Do you have any thoughts on this chapter here? Maybe chapter 28, so we're still on 28.
I do not.
Pretty straightforward. Okay. 29. Okay. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone of the well's mouth was large. And when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, My brothers, where do you come from? They said, We are from Haran. He said to them, Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? They said, We know him. He said to them, It is well with him? They said, It is well, and see, Rachel his daughter is coming with the sheep. He said, Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go, pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep." And just a little side note, um, Jacob is his like profession, his trade is shepherding. So he's trying to like give them some advice right here. And obviously their family does it a little differently with the stone and how they're gathering the sheep and everything. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess, which also is not common. That really only happened when there were no sons in the family. Then the daughters would go and tend to the sheep instead. Now, as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than I should give her to any other man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife that I may go in to her, for my time is completed." So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her servant. And in the morning, behold, it was Leah, and Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban said, "It is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years." Jacob did so and completed her week, and in that culture they call it the bridal week, which is like a week of festivities after the wedding. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served Laban another 7 years. And the serving 7 years for each daughter was a way to basically pay the bridal price, right? So like a dowry. So Jacob didn't have any money to pay the family to take the wife, so he worked for the daughter instead. And I think everything else is pretty straightforward on that. But obviously, he got tricked, and now he has both of them as his wives. Oh, and also, so with him being tricked into betting Leia, it's important to recognize that in that culture, it would have been pretty normal for the bride to be veiled the whole time. So basically, like her face would have been covered, like the entire night. So he wouldn't have seen her face, and if they'd never known each other in that way, he wouldn't have been able to know the difference. When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, He opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben. And she said, because the Lord has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon, or I guess that's Simon in that language. Again, she conceived and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will be attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she ceased bearing. And this is important to see that Leah was putting all her trust and her faith in her husband, and she was failing to trust God. And then finally, after a few children, she realizes that she needs to praise God, and that's why she named her um, fourth fourth son Judah, in recognition that she is trusting God. You have a comment? What? What?
Nope, not right now.
Okay. Messing with audio settings really quick. Oh, okay.
No, I have nothing to say right now.
Okay. All right. That was Saturday's, and we're gonna hop over to today's. Oops. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, give me children, or I shall die. Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? Then she said, here is my servant Bilhah. Go into her, so that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her. And remember, in that culture, it was pretty common for if the wife could not have children, then the husband would take the servant and have children for the wife, but then the children would be legally the husband and wife's, and they would have no legal, the servant would have no legal right to the children. So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went in to her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has judged me and has also heard my voice and given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed. So she called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, good fortune has come. So she called his name Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, happy am I, for women have called me happy. So she called his name Asher. In the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. And mandrakes back then were they were thought to be what's the word for it? And they make you fertile. I can't remember the right term for it, but that it was a superstition that mandrakes were would help with fertility. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "It is a small matter that you have taken, or is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" Rachel said, "Then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." So he lay with her that night, and God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, "God has given me my wages because I gave my servant to my husband." So she called his name Issachar. Issachar. Gosh, I'm so bad at pronouncing these names. And Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will honor me because I have borne him six sons." So she called his name Zebulun. Afterward, she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. Excuse me. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, "God has taken away my reproach." And she called his name Joseph, saying, "May the Lord add to me another son." Oh my gosh, excuse me. Oh, hello. Thanks for joining us. We are going through, 30, Genesis chapter 30 right now. You are more than welcome to chime in if you have any thoughts or anything. Want to read along with us. One thing I want to note where Leah is basically saying that, she's flat out saying, "God has given me my wages because I gave a servant to my husband." It's important to note that God will not always basically call us out when we have silly justifications for things that happen. Just because things happen the way that they do does not mean that that our choices, or a choice that we're identifying as the reason for an outcome, are actually that. So it's important to remember that things happen in God's terms, and because God wants them to, not necessarily because of our not so great choices. Um, yes. Okay. So now she has had Joseph. As soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, that I may go, for you know the service that I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages, and I will give it." Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you, and how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now when shall I provide for my own household also?" He said, "What shall I give you?" Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come to look into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen." Laban said, "Good, let it be as you have said." But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in the charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. So Laban agreed to give Jacob all this, striped, speckled, spotted, black, all the non-pure white goats and sheep. He agreed that those would be Jacob's. But then before Jacob could go tend to the sheep, Laban went and took all the ones that were supposed to be given to Jacob and hid them, right? So that he wouldn't know that they were gone. He didn't want to pay him all of these sheep and goats. Then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs. That is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. Ow, excuse me. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks, and so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped, and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart, and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock he would not lay them there. So the feebler would be Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly, and had large flocks, female servants, and male servants, and camels and donkeys. So a little breakdown of what's actually happening here. So Jacob, basically, he thought that if he put striped and spotted sticks in front of the sheep when they were breeding, that would make the sheep have streaks and spots, which would mean that they were his, right? Because Laban had taken all of the striped and spotted ones that were supposed to go to him, so there was all white ones. So Jacob thought that putting these sticks here would make them striped and spotted. Oh my gosh, of course now I have hiccups. Sorry. But of course what's really happening here, sticks are not going to change the color of animals. As God is intervening here, and he is changing these sheep. He's as they're breeding, they're having babies that are the right, colors of what Jacob is supposed to be claiming for his flock, right? So this is definitely like one of those interesting little divine interventions here, but it's also a good example of how people like to take credit in very weird, circumstances, very strange circumstances. We like to take credit for things that it's definitely God stepping in and doing these things. So now Laban's flock is small and weak, right? And Jacob's flock is very large and healthy and strong. Do you have any thoughts? No?
Nope, not at this point in time.
Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has gained all this wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before. But the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the spotted shall be your wages, then all the flock were spotted. And if he said, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. And I said, Here I am. And he said, Lift up your eyes and see. All the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go out from this land, and return to the land of your kindred. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, Is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has indeed devoured our money. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. So Jacob arose and set his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob tricked Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he intended to flee. He fled with all that he had and arose and crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. When it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsmen with him and pursued him for 7 days, and followed close after him into the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him, Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. Oh, excuse me. And Laban said to Jacob, What have you done, that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and trick me, and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre? And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your fathers spoke to me last night, saying, Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And now you have gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? Jacob answered and said to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Anyone with whom you will find your gods shall not live. In the presence of your kinsmen, point out what I have that is yours, and take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. I think one thing that is really interesting about that part is that Laban he doesn't worship God, he worships, other false gods. But God still very clearly spoke to him and he received it. Like he knows, he understands, and he acknowledges that God spoke to him, but even though he worships these false gods. So I think that kind of speaks volumes that God speaks to everybody, and how we receive it, that's we choose how we receive it. That's part of our free will, but it's just crazy that somebody who worships false gods and may not even necessarily believe in Abraham's God, the God of Abraham, um, recognizes his God and obeyed him, even if he doesn't worship him. I thought that was really interesting. And with Rachel taking the idols, right? She took um, the idols of the gods. That shows that she also um, she obviously believed in these false gods and didn't necessarily believe in, the one true God. So that's interesting. Um, so Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two female servants, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent, and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, "Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me." So he searched but did not find the household gods. So Rachel put them in the camel's satchels, hid them, and sat on them. And um, she basically told her dad that she was sitting up there because she was menstruating. And back then, whatever a woman was sitting on was, of course, considered very unclean. So that would have been normal for her to not be able to get up and, you know, embrace her father or whatever. So he didn't even question it. Then Jacob became angry and berated Laban. Jacob said to Laban, "What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have felt through all my goods. What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flock. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your two daughters, and 6 years for your flock. And you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night." Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day for these my daughters, or for their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me." So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, "Gather stones." And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Ouch. Laban called it Jagar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galid. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." Therefore he named it Galid and Mizpah, for he said, "The Lord watch between you and me. When we are out of one another's sight, the Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. If you oppress my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no one is with us, see, God is witness between you and me." Then Laban said to Jacob, "See this heap and the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to you, and you will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me to do harm. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us." So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country and called his kinsmen to eat bread. They ate bread and spent the night in the hill country. Early in the morning, Laban arose and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned home. Um, I think the biggest takeaway here is that God's will prevail, but a lot of times our actions will cause a lot of conflict, um, and just a lot of kind of chaos that didn't need to happen, right? If we trust God, then there's a lot less um, of the tension, of the conflict, and where there's constantly, pretty much everybody in this entire story is very sinful. They're doing things that they're obviously trying to take control of the situation. They're trying to take control of what God's already promised He's going to do. Um, and in the end, God's plan is going to win. It's going to prevail. But when they're doing all these things, they're causing a lot of problems. And now we see that the ultimate consequence of this is now Laban is basically cutting them off, right? They're cut off from each other, and Laban is saying, "I'm not going to come find you. You're not going to come find me, and we're just going to leave each other alone." And now this is a broken family, um, because of all of the different sins that have been happening, all the different tricks, and all the different um, cruelty that they have um, done to each other. You have any thoughts?
Nope, not at this time.
Nope. And our friend here, if you're still watching, if you have any thoughts, you're more than welcome to chime in here in chat. And we've got our Discord if you want to hop in there too. But definitely feel free to join the conversation in any capacity. Okay. Next couple chapters are pretty straightforward. Oh, that was weird. What the heck? What are you doing? Look, it's cutting. Okay, well. Okay, I think we're okay now. That was weird. Okay. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." So he called the name of that place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, "Thus you shall say to my lord Esau," ow, excuse me. Oof, excuse me, so sorry. "Thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, and female servants. I have sent to tell my lord, in order that I may find favor in your sight." Oh, ouch. Gosh, they're hitting me hard today. Whew. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you. And there are 400 men with him." Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people who were with him, and the flocks and herds and camels, into two camps, thinking, "If Esau comes to one camp and attacks it, then the camp that is left will escape." And Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, 'Return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good,' I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. But you said, 'I will surely do you good, and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude.'" So he stayed there that night, and from what he had with him he took a present for his brother Esau, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their calves, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. These he handed over to his servants, every drove by itself, and said to his servants, "Pass on ahead of me and put a space between drove and drove." He instructed the first, "When Esau my brother meets you and asks you, 'To whom do you belong? Where are you going? And whose are these ahead of you?' Then you shall say, 'They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau, and moreover he is behind us.'" He likewise instructed the second and the third, and all who followed the droves. "You shall say the same thing to Esau when you find him, and you shall say, 'Moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us.' For he thought, 'I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterward I shall see his face, perhaps he will accept me.' So the present passed on ahead of him, and he himself stayed that night in the camp. The same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and everything else that he had. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men, and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered." The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. So, God basically showed himself in like a human form and like physically wrestled with Jacob, and God conquered him by hurting his hip. Kind of weird. And then he changed his name from Jacob to Israel, which of course is important. That is significant. Do you have any comments?
Nope, not at this point in time.
So Jacob being defeated by God resulted in a blessing from God, right? So God won his, God wins every time. And then Jacob was blessed. And Israel translates, the Hebrew translates to "he contends with God." And this note is interesting. It says, "Once broken by God, Jacob ceased to become the supplanter and instead became the one for whom God himself would strive." And Peniel translates to "face of God," which would explain that name. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Okay. And let's see, 33. So this is the last one for today, which is a very long one. Oh, hello. We have a couple that joined us. We're on our last chapter for the reading. We're in Genesis chapter 33. And we are right at where Jacob is going to reunite with his brother Esau. Okay. And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 female servants, And he put the servants with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. So he puts them in order of favoritism. He himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. When Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And when Esau lifted up his eyes and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the servants drew near, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down, and last Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor in the sight of my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Jacob said, "No, please. If I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me. Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." Thus he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go ahead of you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the nursing flocks and herds are a care to me. If they are driven hard for one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly, at the pace of the livestock that are ahead of me, and at the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." So Esau said, "Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir, but Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore the name of the place is called Sukkoth. And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way from Padan Aram, and he camped before the city. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the piece of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. So that is the beginning of Israel right there. And that is important to note that that was the second acquisition of Canaanite land by this family. And that is significant because, remember from way back many chapters ago, there was the curse of Ham that was a curse on his son Canaan, that the Canaanites would be overtaken by the Hebrews, and um, their land would go to them. So for um, Jacob, whose name is now Israel, to purchase land here, that is another step in that in that blessing of the Hebrews taking the Canaanite land, because Jacob is the grandson of Abraham. So we've got Abraham, who was the Hebrew, right? So Abraham, and then Isaac, and then Jacob, who becomes Israel. They are the line of succession, um, and Jacob will eventually inherit the family, and he is his descendants will be the Hebrew people, right, who will inherit the Canaanite land of Canaan. So that in itself is significant. And of course, like I said, his name is changed to Israel, and Israel is named after him and this land that he just purchased. So this is the beginning of Israel right here, which of course is very significant in itself. Um, do you have any thoughts?
Nope, not at this point in time. Anybody else?
Anybody have any input? No? Okay. Well, I have a couple of things that I wanted to kind of trail back on as far as kind of the difference between the two wives. Um, so Rachel was the beloved wife, and she gave birth to Joseph, who, because Rachel was the favorite wife, Joseph was the favorite child. Um, and she was definitely kind of a spoiled wife. Um, she and Leah were both very jealous of each other and battled with each other over the affections of Jacob. Leah really didn't. I mean, this was all kind of brought on her, right? She didn't really have a choice. She had to obey her father, do what he told her to do, and it put her in a really crappy situation where she became a very unloved wife. Um, and at first, she focused on, the things that just made her miserable and the things that she was lacking and the things that she was jealous of. But as she went along, she started to change, and she started to realize that, she needed to put her hope and her faith in God and stop worrying about what her husband wanted from her or saw in her, felt about her. Um, she focused a lot on, she focused everything on what Jacob thought of her and felt for her. But when that changed, um, she changed. And I love this note here. Leah personified for every woman the crucial need to live primarily for God and His glory. Though she may have been unattractive in appearance, unloved, unwanted, and even despised, God saw in her an inner beauty that equipped her to carry out His plan. She could not change Jacob, but she could change herself and recognize God's hand in her life. Leah, for her part, did not let the attitudes of others distract her from the task God had given her. I think that really um, speaks to how we, all of us, no matter who we are, male, female, whatever our status or our circumstances are, that speaks to how we should be. We shouldn't worry about, comparing ourselves to others. We shouldn't worry about outward earthly things. We should worry about, the gifts and the blessings God has given us inside. It's the inside that matters. I know we hear that all the time. That's so cliche, but she's such a perfect example of that. Um, and when she stops worrying about the outward stuff and starts focusing on the inward and the relationship that she has with God, she is blessed and she finds joy, and um, she really, her situation improves, and her outlook improves. And I love that, she doesn't let the attitudes of others distract her from the task God has given her. And that's really important for all of us, is we need to remember not to let um, earthly things distract us, like what others think of us or what others say about us or how others behave in general. We shouldn't let that distract us from how we are called to act and behave and speak. Um, we we are called to be above that. We need to portray the righteous, godly behavior, um, no matter what's going on around us. So I think there's a lot to take away from that, but that's my thoughts on that. Anybody have any thoughts or input that they would like to share before we end our very long session today? Okay. Well, thank you to anybody who joined us. Hope that you were able to take something away from the reading today, whatever you were able to catch of it. And we will do these. We do these Monday through Friday, and we start at about 9:30 Pacific time. If you should ever like to join us in the future. And I hope you guys have a good day. Oh, looks like we've got something incoming. Oh, yay! Oh, I must have missed that while I was reading. Thanks, Alex. Are you who I think you are? Yes? No? I don't know if you're gone already. Okay. Well, thanks for following. Hope you can join us in the future. And we'll pick this up. Yes, I thought so. Yay! I don't know how much you caught, but I'm glad that you're here. A very, very long one today. But yay! Well, I hope you can join us moving forward. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.